Welcome back, and you've just joined me this evening. We're talking to Nadia Raji. We're talking about business, grant funding. We're talking about people who are in retirement or planning retirement, no succession planning. And Nadia just explained that what she does in the business broking side is help these smaller business. She raised 10, 20, 50 million type of money. Such a pity when you've spent a lifetime building and you've got no one to take over. I now want to ask Nadia, what are the obstacles that sellers face in attempting to have someone acquire their business?
Great question, Brian. So I'd say there are 5 key things that we come across often. So firstly, it's poor financial records. A seller is, until they decide to sell, they spend less time on their financial records than perhaps they should. This is a business that's turning a net profit of 3-5 million rand a year. They're probably a mom and pop family-owned business, and they're doing really well for themselves. But financial records is not something they really, spend too much time on. So that's number 1. And then valuations and the realism around valuations. A lot of accountants prepare valuations on behalf of these business owners, but it's the same thing as when you sell your house and you've put everything into that house and you've built it over time and you have all this passion and love for this house that you believe is worth 5 million rand, but that the market will only pay 3 million for. And so there's this unrealistic view on what valuations are. Then there's outdated compliance, which trips up everyone in terms of, is the compliance ready for a transaction to actually take place? The emotional attachment to a price is what I've spoken about as well during the valuation. So what is the right valuation to put down? And is it an emotional valuation, or is it based on what can actually be sold at and financed if you're looking to sell it to certain types of buyers? And what we've also seen is that most sellers have struggled to get themselves sufficiently out of the operations of their business. So that makes the transition a bit harder. That's what we see a lot of, Brian.
Yeah, you raised the point about property. People always think their property is worth a lot more, but it's what a willing buyer and a willing seller are prepared to accept. And if we look at Johannesburg as an area, I mean, property prices compared to the Cape, absolutely, it costs you, if you want to replace your home in the Cape that you've got here, and many people that are relocating maybe will not replace what they've got here, but will go into something differently. You're talking about 4 to 6 times the price you'll get in Johannesburg. So let me ask you this question: why are development financial institutions and banks cautious about inflated multiples?
Wow. Okay, so this is a big one, because what happens is with an inflated multiple is, what is the ability of the new buyer to actually pay back the developmental finance institution? So these DFIs, IDC, NEF, CIFA, IFC, all of these institutions that lend money as developmental institutions need that money to be repaid so that the money can continue to grow and they can help additional businesses. They also borrow money themselves. So they need to know that there's a solid business case and that the buyer, during the transition phase, they need to go and create new relationships with existing customers and with existing suppliers. It's a tricky place for anyone to be.
Okay, so it's very different to grant funding, where you made the comment you don't have to repay the money. In this area,
yes,
money's raised, but the money's got to be repaid at some stage.
It's got to be repaid.
Yeah. Okay.
And can the business afford to repay it?
Yeah.
Sorry, Brian.
I'm going to jump. There are lots of other questions, Nadia, that I would like to ask you, but I want to go to emails, because I always get people saying to me, this type of subject, you come and we don't allow us to ask questions. So I want to go to the emails. The first email I'm going to go to is the email from Ian in King Williamstown. He says, do business have to be black owned to make use of grant funding?
No, not necessarily. Depends on the specific grant and whether you're qualifying business. There are grants that are available for non-black businesses as well.
Okay. You've answered Craig's answer. That was the question regarding grant funding, and government doesn't get involved, but it needs something. I've got Oliver now. He says, how long does it take to get funds?
That can vary quite widely. Well-prepared applications, couple of months. Poorly prepared ones can take years, and really can just keep getting, you feel like you're being pulled along and the string just never ends, the string of questions. And that's because of the amount of preparedness that you put in at the front of the application.
And Lillian in Limpopo says, I've already got funds from the IDC. Is it possible to raise further government grants? And would you be able to help us? Or do we have to go direct to the IDC?
So you're always able to go direct to the IDC and to grant funders. If you've already got funding from an institution, you are always able to get additional funding from others, provided it's not for the same thing. So we can certainly help you unpack some of that nuance and intricacy to determine which of the funders is also the appropriate one to go to, how much security you have available for them, etc. And whether security is even necessary. For example, in grant funding, it's not.
And Beverly in Durban says, is this type of funding open to family-owned businesses?
Absolutely it is. It doesn't matter whether you're a family-owned business or a listed entity, provided you need the support in accessing capital to grow, these funds are available to you.
Okay, legal question. Roger and Houghton says, I'm married in community of property and run a business independently of my husband. To obtain grants, will I have to provide personal surety?
Not for grant funding, no. So you should be good. Typically with grant funding comes matched funding, which is debt and or equity. And the debt providers typically require that you would need to put in sureties. So that's when it may become more necessary for us to look at what the consents have available in your particular contract.
Yeah. And then the last email this evening is from Jack. And Jack says, what is the minimum number of employees required to qualify for grant funding? And what are the BEE requirements?
So each program differs. There's no minimum number of employees per se. An important reality is that all the grant funds want to ensure that there's no retrenchments or loss of jobs. But they do also ensure that they always want new jobs to be created. Whether that's 1, 10, 50 jobs, there's no minimum per se. In terms of BEE, it depends again. Typically, the rule of thumb is a level 4 triple BEE is needed.
Okay, well, please help me. Level 4 being?
Level 4. So the BEE codes go from level 1 being the best and level 8 or non-compliant, in fact, being the worst. And level 4, depending on the turnover of your business, you would need to contribute differently toward how many people of color you have as employees, how many people of color you have in management, what ownership level is, and various other things. Interestingly, a lot of listed entities with low levels of ownership still manage to get a level 1 or 2. You'd need to consult with the BEE consultant to get some better guidance on your specific.
Nadia, in the year when we chat, you've always said one thing, that acquisitions drive transformation. Please just give some context to that statement.
So what we've found is that starting a business is really hard. And by acquiring a business, acquiring the free cash flows of a business, the customers, the systems, the team within a business, it accelerates Black ownership. Now, we've obviously come out of many years now as we're trying to move the transformation agenda and localization agenda in South Africa, where transformation has always been seen as something negative, or often been seen as something negative, but where baby boomers can actually have others come into the economy by selling their businesses at a fair value. Our view is that is the most sustainable way of creating depth within our country and shifting the narrative and the economic wealth into a more sustainable South Africa.
Nadia, what does a properly structured acquisition look like? I mean, and let's just talk about, just give us an example from start to finish of a business takeover, what you had to go through and how you helped both the seller and the buyer come in.
Awesome. So I would say that clean financials is a big one. We spoke about that a little bit earlier, as well as a realistic valuation. Those are two fundamentals. If you have those two things and good people on either side with real interest to make the deal work, we see that both buyer and seller are able to negotiate on fair terms and in good faith. We have the infrastructure available to allow for various trust account utilization and to time the appropriateness of trust being built between both buyer and seller. What we find is a lot of sellers actually would like to leave pretty quickly. They want to be able to hand over in an effective way, but they really are looking to exit their businesses. And depending on how mature the buyer is, they may or may not need much support. What we've found really interesting is where a lot of support is needed. There are these baby boomers who are giving a lot of their time, and it gives them a lot of joy to then continue to bring and breathe in their experience during the transition plan over 6 months or a year to really make sure that their legacy is well looked after. And with a real true buyer, we see that that's very possible.
And as we're running out of time, a quick one, you will help these buyers to actually raise funds to settle the sellers.
Yes.
Well,
yes, Bryan.
I'm going to leave you with that last statement. Yes, yes, yes. Lovely having you on the show. While Uzenzela's business activities expanded into many areas, their origins lie in helping business attract external finance. When submitting a funding application, it's essential to have a well-structured financial statements and a solid business plan. The investment decision you make within your business can affect your ability to leverage finance for growth. Few business owners know how to access funding through government institutions. The process can be laborious and time-consuming, but when done correctly, the results are well worth the effort. And Uzenzela has assisted many businesses in secure funding, and if you found our program valuable, you're most welcome to visit their website, www.uzenzela.co.com. Nadia, it's great to have you on the show again. Thank you for joining me this evening. It's important to note that our program tonight is to provide information and should not be construed as advice. Next week's program will be focusing on healthcare, and it will be our final show of the year, as many of you have important healthcare decisions to make before the end of the year. I will be dedicating the program towards this topic. And if you need to get hold of me, my details will appear on the screen. I'd like to thank you for watching, and good night.